Welcome to the Cinematters New York Social Justice Film Festival 2021. I'm Karima B. Parton, the Associate Director of the Film Festival. Just so you know, the Cinematters New York Social Justice Film Festival presents impactful films that engage the community toward a more democratic, inclusive, and just society. The festival explores themes of inequality, injustice, and social responsibility. Through films, special events, and conversations all weekend long, we aim to inspire participants to reflect and take action in order to create a community of civic-minded individuals eager to make a collective change. In the spirit of Dr. King's legacy, whose birthday is today, our goal is to promote social action that leads to positive change in our society and beyond. We are so thankful to the amazing partners and filmmakers who have joined with us this year to make it happen. Next up, really excited to share about this film, Missing in Brooks County, directed by Lisa Molomot and Jeff Burness. It's a documentary about the epicenter for migrant deaths in the United States, which isn't on the border. It's in Brooks County, Texas, 70 miles north of the Rio Grande. Two families arrived there to search for their missing loved ones and find haunted land and very, very few answers. Before we introduce the speakers for today, there's just a few things. One, during these tough times, we are relying on support from our community more than ever before to keep our virtual programming strong and keep us connected to each other. Please consider making a donation to the JCC so we can remain a thriving hub for resources, connections, and community for years to come. To donate, please text the word community to 56512. Now, for our audience today, we're so grateful to have you here. If you have any questions for the panelists, please put them in the chat box. And if your question is selected, someone from the festival team will contact you and we will unmute your mic to ask so that you can ask your question live. And now for our speakers. Today, we are so honored to have Lisa Molomot. She is the producer, co-director, and cinematographer for Missing in Brooks County. Lisa has directed and edited documentaries about the American Southwest in recent years, including Precious Knowledge, The Cleaners, and Soledad. She also has focused on stories about education. Her hugely popular film, Schools Out, has been an integral part of the movement for providing outdoor education for young children. And her recent short film, Teaching in Arizona, is an inside look at the teaching crisis in that state. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Next, we have Eduardo Canales. He is the executive director of the South Texas Human Rights Center based in Valparaiso, Texas. Eduardo Canales was an organizer of the third-party movement La Raza Unida in Texas in the 1970s and has been a community and labor activist ever since. Eddie worked on SEIU's groundbreaking Justice for Janitors campaign in Denver and was a strong voice within the labor movement for racial equity and progressive positions on immigration. Eddie has played a leading role in immigrant rights coalitions in Colorado and Texas, and is currently chair of the National Network for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. He is an organizer for the Rocky Mountain Council of the Carpenters Union. Welcome, Eduardo. Next, we have Dr. Kate Spradley. She's a professor of anthropology at Texas State University and a participant in this film. She's the founder and director of Operation Identification, established in 2013. OPID provides humanitarian assistance to families of the missing and human rights assistance to migrants that die crossing the Texas-Mexico border. The mission of OPID is to facilitate identifications and reparations through community outreach, forensic anthropological analysis, and collaboration with governmental and non-governmental organizations. Welcome, Dr. Kate Spradley. And our moderator for today is Iris Rodriguez-Rosa. She's the Bronx Borough Parks Commissioner for the New York City Parks Department. She's the highest ranking Hispanic in the New York City Parks and Recreation organization. Iris's career in city government began in 1978, working as a community board liaison with Brooklyn Borough President Howard Golden. She became the youngest appointed community board district manager at age 23. In 1986, she joined the New York City Parks Department and served as chief of recreation in the Bronx and Queens for 20 years. In June 2015, she became the Bronx Parks Commissioner, overseeing all the parks in the Bronx. In this role, she continues to expand her relationship building with local organizations and elected officials in order to fund programming opportunities in the Bronx. She's also dedicated herself to public service in many capacities, especially for the Latino community, including starting the Latino Society at Parks, and has been a member of the Hispanic Grand Council of Societies in Public Service for over 25 years. Welcome, Iris.
Thank you, Karima. Thank you so very much. One of the things, you talk about your professional work, but my aspect in terms of social involvement is very important. And when I saw this film, it just moved me to new areas and new directions that I want to focus on in my personal life to be able to be helpful in many other ways. But I want to be able, as your moderator, I want to congratulate the producers, the directors, the editors, and of course all the participants in this film that made this film possible. My husband and I were watching it, and we were just so moved by the dedication, the commitment that you all have on this for this project. So, without further ado, what I'd like to do is, of course, as your moderator, I'd like to be able to ask some questions of you in terms regarding the film and what your feelings and thoughts about the film is altogether. So why don't we start with Lisa? I'd like to be able to ask Lisa, how did you particularly find this story? How did this story come to your attention for you to be able to present it?
So I'm the co-director. Jeff Bemis is the other co-director on this film. And he and I initially set out to do a small film about a forensic scientist who's working along the border. And we met her in Texas, and we drove down to Brooks County with her. And we had never heard of Brooks County at this time. And we first asked, okay, can we see the border? Take us to the border. And she said, well, we're nowhere near the border. We're 70 miles north of the border. And that was our very first trip to Brooks County. And each time we went back, the story became more confusing and intense and complicated, as sometimes happens with documentaries. We just kept filming. We did about 15 trips over the course of 5 years. To Brooks County, and eventually focused on 2 families who were missing, looking for their missing loved ones. And we found Dr. Kate Spradley through this original forensic scientist who is a colleague. And we decided to focus on Kate's work. Kate is the forensic scientist who is mainly doing the work with her students and colleagues in Brooks County. And on that very first trip, we also met Eddie Canales and knew right away that he was going to be someone that was part of all of this. So, we, like so many documentary projects, it sort of began as a very small film about a forensic scientist, and grew from there. And, the more we learned about it, the more we knew the story that we wanted to tell.
It's amazing. There's always a story behind the story, right? And that's how this all came about. And one of the other questions that I have, and it's important for me because I used to be a board member of the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. So giving this message in terms of an artistry kind of way, it's important. Lisa, how did you come about connecting with the Romans, with the family?
So that is an interesting story. We created a website, a very basic website for the film, in order to show funders or anyone that was interested in participating in the film. And Michelle Chinos, who is the sister-in-law of Homero Roman. So Homero is the main person who went missing in our story. And the Romans are his family. And Michelle is the sister-in-law of Homero. And she was Googling one day missing Brooks County. So Homero had been missing for 2 years at that point. She was Googling, just trying to get more information, because, it's very difficult for families to get any kind of information or to know what to do when their family goes missing. And so this kind of shows you a little bit of like what one family was going through. She was just Googling missing Brooks County, and she came across our website. And she emailed us, and we immediately put her in touch with Eddie. But we also said, hey, we're coming to Houston next week. Can we just meet and talk about our film? And perhaps you guys want to participate in our film. And to be honest, at that point, we had already been following 2 other families. So part of me was like, oh God, I don't know if I want to sort of go down that road with them, but you have to explore everything. So we met Michelle, her husband, Omar, they're both in the film, and Omar's 2 siblings who are also both in the film. And we met them at Starbucks. And I think we knew almost right away that we wanted to all collaborate together. We told them about the film. They told us the whole story of Omero, how he went missing. And from that point on, we decided to collaborate together and have them participate in the film. And I have to say, one of the highlights of working on this whole project is their reaction to the film after they saw the film. They were so happy to be part of it, and so proud to be part of it. And that was just such a relief, but also just such a coup for us, because for them to acknowledge the importance of this film is the most important thing for us.
I muted myself. How were you able to gain access to the vigilante group, the Vickers Border Patrol? I mean, that seems a little bit kind of intense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we filmed with Dr. Vickers a number of times. We kept asking him, can we go on an operation? Can we go on an operation? And he would always say, I need to talk to the board. And we'd say, okay, talk to the board. And then we'd follow up again. And no, I haven't talked to the board yet. And we were sort of thinking, he's never going to let us on one of these operations. And then after a few years, we just asked one more time, and he said, oh yeah, sure, come. So I have no idea. I think that he saw us as independent filmmakers as not very threatening, and also not very important, because he's used to talking to CNN or Fox, or he didn't really understand what we were doing as independent filmmakers, I think. But he did give us time to, he would if he could. He's a very busy man. He's a very established vet in Brooks County, and so he made time for us when we asked for the time. But it's interesting because the people who participate in these operations really believe strongly in what they believe. They're not hiding from anything. They believe what they believe, and they want to share that. So, and actually, it wasn't that difficult to have access. I think the difficulty was just that we were independent filmmakers, and perhaps not a priority for them.
Well, good. Persistence paid off. I think that was important. And the Border Patrol, what do you think was their attitude regarding the subject matter? The Border Patrol, did you feel connected to them, or did they feel that they were sort of not caring, or?
It's a mix, because, when you're driving through the checkpoint, you saw what happened with the Romans. Like, they got the questioning and the business. When they were going through, we also experienced the same thing one time with them. We had to pull over, they had to check for drugs, and just like so there's that. But then there were the ride-alongs with them. We spent time with Border Patrol, but we were with a special division of Border Patrol that does the search and rescues, and those guys are really committed to doing their jobs. They, in some way, they put their own lives on the line, because, some of what we saw them doing was, getting all, ready to like go on a, hour-long hike in the desert, in the heat, in the summer, with their water and their backpacks. And, so they're like taking risks also. It's we don't go into this in the film very much, but you know, there are snakes out there. We're wearing snake boots. You know, it's not a very pleasant so you get a sense of what the migrants are going through. But you know, the Border Patrol are also going out there and searching, and you know, so we were lucky. I think we were with some really great guys when we were working with them for the most part. It's a mix. I mean, I think they're human beings and they're all different, you know, just like we are all different. And they all have different reasons for being part of Border Patrol. It's a really good job. There aren't a lot of high paying jobs in that part of Texas. And it's a, you know, a very good job. And I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I know they did a survey here once with teenagers about what they want to do when they grow up. And a really large percentage of them said they want to work as a Border Patrol agent.
Great, Lisa. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. I want to go to Eddie, to Eduardo. Perdona, tengo que decirlo en español, Eduardo. So, Eduardo, thank you so very much. What is currently happening in Brooks County right now in terms of the crisis? I mean, I know the film was done about a year or two ago, I believe. So what is the current situation in Brooks County?
What is consistent with on the border is that people are consistently trying to come through, you know, desperate to reach their destination and work, you know, basically, and provide for their families. So, you know, this past you know, 2 weeks, there has been an increase in a lot of calls for missing migrants. And so we operate the Missing Migrants Hotline also, and so that's ongoing, you know, and trying to assist families in terms of where people can be located, you know, if they're in detention. The difference that between last year or 2019 and 2020 is that most people that were being from calls that we were getting, 80% of those people were being detained and placed in detention facilities. As of now, as a different scenario imposed by the Trump administration, there was a public law that basically shut the border down, and most of those people were immediately expelled. So within an hour or so, they were back at the bridge, and the closest bridge, and they were placed back into Mexico. So that percentage in terms of the people that are missing has gone way up. In terms of 20% of people have had contact with Border Patrol, and 80% of the people are missing. So it's a different scenario in that aspect of it. And it is also from what was concentrated on our region, the Rocky Mountain, the RGV, the Rio Grande Valley has extended out all the way up to El Paso and the Big Bend area. So it's a very very remote and dangerous areas where people are going missing. And we're still maintaining our water stations and hope to increase the number of water stations this winter and prepare for spring and summer of next year.
Well, a question that I have in terms of Dr. Vickers and how did you feel when he indicated that he was accusing you of plotting with the smugglers and all this? How did you feel about that? I mean, it sounds like he was that you were complicit with.
Well, my question is, how do you feel? You know, basically in terms of what's your reaction to that characterization of myself, you know. And I was just thinking about that before we started our discussion here. I certainly don't like it, don't appreciate it. He's done it before. You know, it's a classic misinformation in terms of you know, trying to deviate from the major issue. You know, and I have to figure out how to address it. In some respects, you know, when the film becomes major public, I'll have to have discussions with some of the ranchers that allow me into their ranches to put water stations. I said, here's what your neighbor is saying about us. Do you feel that, this is something that I'm doing in terms of trying to save lives? So I think I just, I'm bothered by it, because it's not true. And what could he say? I mean, he's not necessarily taking a humanitarian perspective.
Exactly, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, the work that you do is a humanitarian work, and people who don't see it that way is, it's sad. It's a sad case, and yes, I see what you're talking about. One of the other questions I have: will you continue to work with the Romans, with the family, in terms of trying to still, get a final?
Yes, I mean, there's recoveries of remains and bodies consistently in Brooks County. This year, the number was this past year, 2020, was less than the previous year, 2 years. But we're reviewing some of the cases that have been recovered, and for their review in terms of any personal effects that they may recognize and that aspect of it. But we're in contact. I've talked with Michelle and in terms of them making an effort to. They don't necessarily have to come down, but and we have done some searches with them, and we'll continue to try to make efforts to recover their brother-in-law and their brother's body. So it's a constant effort.
Eduardo, thank you so very much for the work that you do. And last but not least, as we all do organizations, you seem to be a one-man show. What happens? I mean, there'll be a time when you retire. Is there someone that's going to, carry the torch and continue to do the labor of humanitarian work that you're doing?
Well, I mean, it's there's cycles in terms of some funding and staffing. We were staffed up, and then then we lost some funding. So right now I have a person that's helping me with take the calls. As a young woman that lives there in Falfurrias, and she's very diligent in terms of the efforts. She's just had family losses, and so I decided to take the calls. It's a good question in terms of how do I turn it over to somebody down the road here. Dr. Spradley doesn't want me to quit, and because we worked so well together for the last 6-7 years, and in terms of some of the the mapping of finding the unidentified bodies all over South Texas. So no, it's a very challenging work, and I think that I'm into it for the long run. And then my daughter is going to graduate from high school, and she wants to continue my work. So there you go.
Good. Thank you, Eduardo. I'd like to go on to Dr. Spradley. Dr. Spradley, it sounds like you're the one that sort of spurned this whole discussion or the movement of being able to have Lisa and Jeff come and do this film. It seems like through you, they got to Eduardo, and the whole project sort of evolved, starting with you. And the question I have is, why is Texas different from Arizona? Can you talk about a little bit more about that dysfunction?
Sure. Arizona receives a high number of migrant deaths, and Texas only surpassed them in 2012, even though Texas is a much larger state. But Arizona has the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner, which is located in Tucson, and it's right near the border. And about 95% of all of the remains that are found along the border are taken to the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner, and the other 5% are taken to another medical examiner's office. So Pima County serves as a very centralized location. They have forensic pathologists doing autopsies. They also employ anthropologists, which not all medical examiners do. They have an NGO embedded within their medical examiner system. And so they're all working collaboratively together. They really are going the extra mile for these transnational identifications that are more challenging and are more difficult. In Texas, you don't have a medical examiner system. You have the justice of the peace system. There's one medical examiner on the 1,200 miles of border that is Texas, and there's 254 counties. So each county has a justice of the peace that has the jurisdictional authority. They don't have training in this. They're often overwhelmed, as in the case of Brooks County, and they don't have the resources to adequately deal with this. So, especially in 2012, when you have 138 deaths in one small county, which is even north of the border, it's not even classified as a border county. They're just overwhelmed, and they were sent to a funeral home and buried without any DNA sampling, which is required by law, nothing else. So it has really created a crisis, and it's just the different systems that each state has, because each state is responsible for their unidentified deaths.
Do you see that the border patrol is doing anything to try to change its policies to avoid causing these deaths?
No, I think if you ask Border Patrol, they would say that their policy is to prevent deaths. I don't think Border Patrol would be the entity that would try to enact change on this. I think now that we have a change in administration, we have a new act that was passed, the Missing Persons and Unidentified Human Remains Act, that was just passed after about 14 years. This is the first time that federal authorities have recognized the loss of the mass deaths that occur at the border, because when prevention through deterrence was signed into action by President Clinton in 1994, everyone assumed that there was going to be a lot of deaths, and everybody was okay with that. And nobody has revisited that or discussed that since then. And it's up to each state to deal with this federal policy. It's usually the poorest jurisdictions that are dealing with the aftermath of this federal policy. So this new policy is not going to fix everything, but it's a good start. It's a conversation starter. It's a foot in the door, I would say. And now that we have a change in administration, and it was actually Kamala Harris that backed this piece of legislation. So I think the next 4 years are going to be times when we can work towards legislation. We can work towards more positive change, but it won't be through Border Patrol. It will be through the non-governmental actors.
Absolutely. I think we have to take advantage of these 4 years coming up, do the best that we can. Did you ever feel that there was the greatest obstacles to seeking resolution that has happened to those missing is apathy on part of the greater Texas community?
I think that there is some apathy, but I think that there are also people who want to do more, but they just don't have the training or the resources to do it. So a lot of it, like what Eddie Canales does, is also organizing, community organizing, and organizing the community and educating the community. When we go in each county to look for unidentified human remains to exhume, like we did in Brooks County, we have to tell them what's going on. Tell them about the unidentified, what we're there to do. We explain the laws to them. And so by the time that we go into a county, we're educating them. And then when we leave, we see them wanting to change their practice. So I think that it is a lot of just education along the way. You see people want to help. They just don't know how to help.
I think it's this movie. I think this film will, I think, spur some people such as myself. The more people will see this film, I think the more people we can get on board to be able to continue the effort that Eduardo Canales has done. So I want to thank Lisa and Dr. Spradley. I saw many of the people that you were working with in the labs, and it was amazing. And I think the film also brought to mind for me the victimization that happens in various aspects of it. What I saw there was the bureaucracy that the Romans family had when they were trying to find information, and they were being sent into all different directions. When we talk about the burial of Juan and how the family received, through the funeral parlor, received the same way it was packaged, from the lab, that it went there and wasn't given the proper respect to the extortion aspect of it, where a family says, well, if you want the Roman, if you want to meet, you have to pay another $2,000. So it goes to show you, it's just a vicious cycle that goes around. So at this point, I'd like to ask Karima if there's other people that want to be able to ask questions. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank you all so very much. I'm honored and privileged to have served as your moderator today, but I think there may be other people that may want to ask some questions. Am I correct, Karima?
Absolutely. Iris, thank you so much for guiding this conversation. If you have any questions, anyone, please place it in the chat and one of our team members will call on you. First, I believe we have Karen Ann.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for being here today. My name is Karen Ann Kling. I work for the University of Michigan at the Poverty Solutions Initiative. And we're doing some research down in California. So this is really exciting for us to be here. I just wanted to ask anyone who wants to answer the question, if you could ask the federal or state government to do one thing that could help prevent families from going through the kind of trauma that the Romans went through, what would you ask for?
I would ask for a regularization program that allows people to come through and regularize their status so that they don't have to go through the dangerous areas. We can seek pathways in terms of people that, I mean, we've seen it during the pandemic that there's essential workers and immigrant workers that play a critical role in sustaining the economy. So why should we be incarcerating and criminalizing people that want to work? So we can create those pathways. It is something that can be done that will alleviate the deaths and the suffering that people go through when they're making an attempt to reach necessary work that is nobody else is doing in this country.
I agree with what Eddie said 100%. And from the forensic science side of that, if there are deaths along the border, one of the main obstacles to make identification is transnational DNA sharing. Our federal government has a very good DNA database, but it only works well if you're an American citizen, and getting them to share data across borders is like moving mountains. And if that obstacle could be removed, we could identify hundreds, maybe thousands of people right now.
Awesome. Okay. Next, we have a question from Abigail.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to say thank you for the film. It was extraordinary. I watched it last night, and I think one of the things that it does is it almost takes away the whole issue of immigration and people coming and as Eddie was just talking about, for work, but really speaks to the dignity of human life. And regardless of how you feel about the policy, there was no way to get around not understanding how a family wants to just know where their loved one is. And if they're dead, but let us know and sort of complete that. So I really appreciated you raising that up. One of the things that, and I think all of you are all saints doing the work you're doing. One of the things that struck me was that all of the people under you, Dr. Spradley, were women. And it just seemed odd to me, especially because it seemed like such physical work, not to be sexist, but it just was interesting to me that it was all young women that were working with you. And I wondered why you think that is.
That's a good question. That's one that it's very, in forensic anthropology all around the country, it's predominantly female. And that's a question that many people are trying to ask. But if you look at the trend in all of the biological sciences, there's a trend for higher numbers of females enrolled across all biological sciences in the country. There's been, I don't exactly know why, but I'll just leave it there. But we have, I couldn't do this. We couldn't do this if it wasn't for the students. So I'm very grateful for all of them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next and last question we have from Ashraf. Did I pronounce that right?
Ashraf, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the three of you. This is a wonderful, amazing film, and thank you for the work that you do. I hope that we can all find ways at the end of this discussion to continue to support you in the work that you do. And hi, Lisa, my old professor. Great to see you. I was curious because the question kind of comes up in the film a bit, and it kind of piggybacks a little bit off what Abigail's question was earlier, but talking about how to continue to be able to humanize and make sure that we see the human dignity in all of the people that you are working with and all the families that you are working with, but also the challenge of doing that day after day and some of the horrors and disappointments and the violence involved in it. I was curious to hear from the three of you how you kind of continue to do that day in and day out and continue to keep your spirits full and taken care of, but wake up every day to do it again.
Let me add that there was made note that, that I'm a one person team, but that's not the case. There's a lot of, we may be a hub, in terms of some, what was missing in Texas, but I have an incredible amount of volunteers. Dr. Spradley, her students are amazing. And the people that come in to help me do water stations drops and do whatever is necessary, will continue. You'll be surprised. And then also surprised in terms of the community, being supportive. If you approach people on a humanitarian basis and leave the politics aside, people will, don't want to see the deaths that occur. So people are very supportive in that respect. I mean, we can check water stations and you'll see additional water being placed in there by the community. So it's very, very great to see that support exist. So, and then also being able to listen to the families and be a representative for them in terms of their anguish and their desperation in terms of, trying to find somebody, a missing son, a missing husband, a missing sister. In that respect, it's if we take the time to listen and be proactive for them, and we may not find the person, but they feel they feel good in the sense that somebody is here for them down here in the area where South Texas is a burial ground, for migrants and has been for the last 20 years.
I'll echo what Eddie said, and we're always doing this for the families, and they're always in the forefront of our minds. And it's not always easy. And like Eddie said, we do have, right before this, we were on a call with our Forensic Border Coalition with all of our colleagues around the state and worldwide too. So we're all of us together working towards the common goal, make it easier, especially when there are so many obstacles. And when we first started, it felt like this was an impossible task. But as we work together more closely year after year, it's been 7 years now, we've pushed some of those barriers out of the way. So I think it always gives us hope that we can keep going and push more barriers out of the way.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then before we wrap up, Lisa, can you tell us a bit more about how we can follow your film? What's next for the film? You worked so hard on this, you and Jeff, and we really do appreciate you sharing this with us as Cinematters. But how can we support you?
So, well, we have a website. It's really easy to find. Even Michelle Chinos was able to find it. So if you just type in missing in Brooks County, you can find it. And we always keep that updated with the film festival screening. So in the next year or so, we'll be doing more film festivals. And next fall of 2021, the film will broadcast on Independent Lens. And then from there, I mean, even now we're starting to do an impact campaign with community screenings and just screenings around the country and beyond. So if you are interested in the film, please sign up for our newsletter. We're pretty good about sending that out regularly. And visit our website, sign up for the newsletter. And yeah, you can find some more resources on our website as well about donating to the South Texas Human Rights Center. The center runs on donations. So that's one place to start if you feel like you want to contribute something. But also we always post recent articles about the subject on the website as well, and many other resources.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, we want to thank Lisa and Eduardo, Dr. Kate Spradley, Iris Rodriguez-Rosa. Thank you so much for participating in this conversation about missing Brooks County. We would love to, of course, thank our partners and all of those who are aligned with us in this effort this year. Please look out again for more information on how to get involved. You have the different websites. Thank you so much to our amazing team behind the scenes who have been sending all the information that you can see in the chat there. Our next event for today is a virtual networking event. If you know a filmmaker who is interested in doing social justice kind of work, please join us for an event with the Gotham, formerly known as IFP. They are also offering discounted memberships to anyone who attends, and it's a good chance to just meet people and talk and have a good time. Please consider making a donation to the JCC so we can remain a thriving hub for resources, connections, and community for years to come. To donate, please text the word community to 56512. And you also saw tickets can be found at cinematters.film. Follow us on IG, Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. # Lights, Camera, Take Action. # Cinematters 2021. Again, everyone, thank you so much for coming. And we hope to see you again in another conversation. Take care.